What's up, everybody? Welcome to an emergency reaction podcast talking all things Kyle Tucker. As always, I'm Steve, joined with my tag partner, Devin. What's going on, man?
What's up? Welcome to baseball therapy, everybody. I think that's what we're going to go through here tonight. Some breaking news, and we're going to get right into it. Let's go.
Time for Dodger baseball.
Thank you, Vin Scully. The waiting game is over. We knew it would come. The Los Angeles Dodgers are in agreement on a short-term deal with Kyle Tucker. This is per ESPN's Jeff Passan. John Heyman reported all the contract is not long in nature, and not shortly after that, Devin, we figured out that he's going to be getting a staggering $60 million average annual value and crucially opt-outs after both the second and third seasons. So give credit to Robert Murray, who's first on top of the money. So your initial knee-jerk reaction on the Los Angeles Dodgers and Kyle Tucker now coming fully into focus, knee-jerk reaction right now.
Yeah, this is going to sound dramatic, but it's truly how I feel. Like, I'm a little numb. Like, I'm not. If this was last season, I'd be freaking out right now. Like everybody kind of was against, railing against the Dodgers and all that stuff. But like, very even-keeled reaction. In fact, I told you a little bit before we jumped on here, I'm refreshing the feed as a lot of baseball fans are doing tonight. And then I finally decided to go take a shower. And right before I jump in the shower, I tweeted out a GIF of someone saying, we have them right where we want them. And I was talking about the Dodgers front office because all day, Blue Jays fans and Mets fans like myself were bickering back and forth about who's going to get them. Obviously, the Steve Cohen tweet, which I think we have to talk about tonight, gets put out there, which changes the conversation a little bit. And sure enough, I mean, credit to you, man. We just recorded last night. For those of you that listen to us, you probably heard it. For those of you that are watching us live, maybe for the first time, or watching us on Friday morning or listening to us on Friday morning, Steve, in our most recent episode, we debated this, where Tucker's going. I said I still feel like he's going to the Blue Jays. Steve took the route of the Dodgers, and not a lot of people were saying that, even though it's the Dodgers. We knew they were in the mix, but I mean, I put a poll out earlier today. Simple. Where's Kyle Tucker going? Mets, Blue Jays, Dodgers, or surprise? Only 6% of people, and then this one got a lot of votes too. Only 6% of people chose the Los Angeles Dodgers. So knee-jerk reaction, not exactly surprised. I don't know, man. I don't want to be the person that gets on here and complains. I really don't want to be that person. As a Met fan, we'll see. I almost feel like this for the Mets, and maybe we'll talk about them. We'll talk about the Blue Jays maybe a little later in the episode, but just a quick thought on them. I kind of wonder if they do pivot to Cody Bellinger real quick and go get that done, or if this kind of lets them say, you know what, we're just going to go with what we have, because this year, like, who's beating the Dodgers anyway? And I think there's probably a bunch of teams that could take that path. I mean, your knee-jerk reaction, what was your first thought?
Well, it's hard not to discuss, like you mentioned before, how the Mets are affected, also how the Blue Jays are affected, how the rest of the National League is affected, because this, let's not mistake about it, it is an enormous windfall for the best free agent on the market that was left, and a clear signal, as I mentioned last night on episode 131, that the reigning champs are not interested in standing still. They're trying to capitalize on this window. And we looked at the way this free agency was working with him. We knew it wasn't going to be conventional by any means, and the structure is unique, and maybe this is indicative of where the future will be. 4 years, $240 million. We mentioned staggering $60 million average. The New York Mets, we had all the reports coming out, New York Post, everyone talking about it all day, trying to force a resolution with what we thought was a ridiculous sum of money, $50 million per year, short-term offer, an aggressive play designed to try to compress the timeline and get whatever that is, the smoke, the Pope reference that Steve Cohen made, trying our best to actually have some resolution to salvage what has been, let's be honest, a disaster of an offseason for the New York Mets. For the Blue Jays, like, yeah, I talked about this being sprinkles on top of the Sunday, but the pivot for the Mets to me is enormous because their offense looks like it has holes in it. And again, we're not taking the field tomorrow. And I think more of this reaction is about the Dodgers and how it affects them right now. But I can't help but think about the butterfly effect of the Blue Jays and potentially the rest of the National League and your New York Mets, because this being left at the altar for Kyle Tucker, especially after that tweet from Steve Cohen. And I know he was making light of it and he's talking about the smoke situation, and it's a bad look. It really is.
Well, what do you want to do? So we jumped on here as quick as we could So we didn't really plan the layout like we usually would. Do you want to really talk about the Dodgers up front first and then go to the Mets and the Blue Jays and the rest of the league and how this affects the future of the league as well? Because that's obviously a conversation on the top of everybody's mind. Or do you want to talk about the Mets and Blue Jays and then go to the Dodgers?
Let's start with the Dodgers, because I mentioned last night during the episode, the baseball standpoint makes sense. It's an immediate need, a decisive need. Everyone's going to look at this as excess for the Dodgers. But if you look at the way the 2025 outfield was functional, but it was inefficient. I mean, they ranked in the middle of the league in overall value. They were sitting near the bottom in on-base percentage. Kyle Tucker directly attacks that weakness. You look at his offensive profile, it's defined by a lot of the command of the strike zone, a guy that is not really volatile. You kind of know what you're getting when he's on the field. And he has an ability to reshape some dynamics in this lineup, and also having the ability to be a guy you can lean on when you have to have some of the rest days for some of these stars. Or this is extending the lineup to the point where, again, the Dodgers outfield needed this. And defensively, we're not going to project Kyle Tucker as this elite by advanced metrics. We know that, but he represents a meaningful upgrade in overall reliability and a complete player. This is a superstar player the Dodgers added to their already superstar lineup. And honestly, you can also take this from the Dave Roberts approach, where his presence is going to allow the Dodgers to optimize roles and rather not stretch position players in spots that they're not comfortable in. So you can actually have the players that are supposed to be playing in the position they're supposed to be. It's not going to be an obvious upgrade at first if he's not going to be able to be healthy. But at the end of the day, Kyle Tucker goes to the champions. And this makes sense for his side of things too, because there is the idea that he's going to be out there after the short term's over. 4 years, he's still going to be out there on free agency potentially after that. He was looking for that 10-year deal. You didn't get it. So what's the best other thing you can do as a player that's looking to expand on your overall value? Get $60 million per year. Get a ring in LA. This makes sense for Kyle Tucker, as much as everyone doesn't want to accept that fact. It felt like it was obvious even as of last night.
Yeah, the fit makes sense. You said the outfield is the one part of the Dodgers roster that you could say, not amazing. And there were parts of the year, whether you want to say it or not, that the Dodgers offense looked a little sleepy. I mean, like said, when the lights turn on, I feel like they wake up, and that's kind of the team they are now, where it's like, wake us up when it's postseason, please. I mentioned it yet. Am I here, Steve? Am I good?
I got you. Yeah, you're here now.
All right, so I'll continue. I mentioned it in last night's episode that I said, like, if he goes to the Dodgers, like, you can't help but say it's the Kevin Durant effect here of Durant going to the Warriors. Now, Tucker is not the superstar, in my opinion, that Kevin Durant is. So it might not reach that level of like, come on, dude. But it is. That's what it is here. Like, you're joining a team that doesn't need you. So, like, if you go there and kill it, I don't think he cares. He's making $60 million a year. Let's just say $60 million a year for a guy that's never been more than, what, 5 F4 player? I don't even know if he's actually reached, I think 4.9 is his highest. Consistent as hell. Has had some injury issues the last couple of years. And I think we might not have seen his ceiling yet, 28 years old. But that type of money, man, even with the opt-outs and all that stuff, and I'm sure we'll hear about the deferred money in the coming hours or days, that is a wild amount of money. And that is the Dodgers, to me, saying, hey, I don't know after next year if we're going to be able to do this again. If they do change a lot of things, salary cap, salary floor, all that stuff, this might be our last opportunity to go flaunt this money around and do something crazy. So let's go do it. He's not getting the offers he wanted. He's either getting high AAV or not, long years, but not the AAV he wanted. And I can't wait to hear what the actual offers were from the Mets and Blue Jays. I would think that information is going to come out. But for him, it sounds like the Dodgers just hung around. And then when they heard the $50 million number, they're like, you know what? Let's do it. Let's beat it. Listen, on FanGraphs, they put the depth chart F4 total of each team out. We've talked about it a little bit on here. We've tweeted about it a little bit on here. They were already, before this signing, at about 51 F4 as a team, which was 5 better than the next closest, which was the Blue Jays and Yankees at 46. And now, I mean, this will be updated eventually. That number is going to be higher because left field, or, I mean, one of the corner outfields, they're only getting projected like 1.8 F4. You're going to put Tucker somewhere out there. It's wild, dude. This is absolutely wild. They are going to be as much of a favorite for the World Series as I think we've seen, I don't know, ever, maybe,
Yeah.
I would think.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, they are a wagon. Once they're fully operational, this is a Death Star of a team. And the outfield that you mentioned being a weakness, and I know you mentioned the Kevin Durant effect, but this was a clear upgrade. I mean, look at the depth chart. I know you have it up in front of you on Fangraphs, where Alex Call is the clearest guy that's going to lose at bats. And okay, sensible, low cost acquisition. Now that's going to evaporate when Tucker's in the picture. Ha-Sung Kim is going to offer some defensive flexibility. Tommy Edman is going to factor into the outfield. So it's not like you have the superstars in the outfield that you're like, all right, now we have this dream team of where we're going to fit everybody. But he fits into a lineup that's already a dream team. And like, I think that is for his effect. There is the downside on him if he wins with the Dodgers. It is the Kevin Durant type of stink that you have on you where you won because you went to a team that was already established. For the Dodgers, this makes sense for them. And I think this makes them obviously a better team, but this is a need that a lot of people, like I said before, don't want to talk about that. Like, this is not just excess. This is what they needed to do to get better. And yeah, you can win a World Series with a subpar outfield. They did it last year, but they're going to blow people away. And again, it's going to remain the path. And I guess my question to you is, how does this change the overall trajectory of free agency going forward? Are we going to see more of this short-term high AAV where you're not having the Albert Pujols aberration of a deal where everyone has to pay for the back end where he's not playing, or you even have, you know, the Bobby Bonilla effect where you have Bobby Bonilla Day with the Mets, and maybe you're just going to pay these players an exorbitant amount of money and not worry about the back end. Is this going to be the norm going forward, or is this a conversation that they have during the next CBA?
I mean, I think this year the high AAV shorter term stuff is in vogue partly because of the uncertainty of the CBA, but I do think those 10-year deals. Remember, we saw Bryce Harper and Manny Machado get 10-year deals in the same offseason for, $300+ million. And for a while, those long-term deals became really popular. You even saw some pitchers getting long-term. The pitcher long-term deals had already started to fade, and for obvious reason. The injuries that these guys deal with, pretty much a sure thing that
we'll call it the Strasburg effect, I guess we'll call it.
Sure. Yeah. So that's already kind of fallen out of favor. And I think it depends on what happens with the CBA. But for me, I think the long-term deals you're going to see are the buying out arbitration years for these high prospect type of guys. That is still going to be popular because why not? But the 28-year-old free agent, which doesn't sound very, very old, Kyle Tucker, only getting 4 years here, but taking $60 million. And I got to push back a little bit. I know you don't mean it this way, but like, there's going to be people listening to this that hear like this is not excess for the Dodgers. And there's going to be fans of the Cleveland Guardians or the Pittsburgh Pirates or the Miami Marlins or Tampa Bay Rays listening to that like sick to their stomach. This is the flaw of baseball. Like, it is excess, but for the Dodgers, it is not. And that's a problem because there are 20, 25 other teams that couldn't even think about putting the roster together that they have. I mean, you can't cry any tears for the Mets, the Yankees, right? Those teams of the world, the Blue Jays, you can't cry any tears for them because they do have the capability. And even the Red Sox, teams like that, they have the capability to do this stuff. But you do have to put yourself in the shoes of these other fans. And like, I can't really push back that much when they complain and yell and scream about this and say like, basically their teams are like a farm system for these other 5 teams. And that it's getting at a little out of hand. We'll see. Maybe this ends up being a good thing in the way of like the owners. Maybe it pushes some owners of the richer clubs to a place of like, yeah, I'm okay with a salary cap. We need to do something. And I know it's more about pushing some of the players to accepting that, right? And I mean, you've already had the Hal Steinbrenners of the world be like, at least say publicly he's okay with it. You've had Dave Roberts, the manager of the Dodgers, say he's cool with it, but you've never heard that from the front office. So I wonder what effect it has. It's anybody's guess. I mean, we're a year out from negotiations, and it is already so contentious between these two. I mean, you've had Manfred put all these ideas out in the media, a lot of them that are very unfavorable to the player, including recently people talking about having a deadline in free agency. And you had Brent Rooker tweeting out, this is like the most or the least player friendly thing you could think of. So like, players and Manfred are already at each other's throats, Tony Clark and the Players Association. Like, it's going to get really messy, but I don't know. I wonder if people around the league are looking at this like, all right, something's got to be done, and we have to make a bigger change here. Uh, something has to be done, man. You can't just let the Dodgers do this every year. And I'm not crying tears for those other big market clubs that really could do the same thing. I'm talking about the other 25 or so clubs that can't.
Yeah, I completely understand that point. And what I mean by not access is that the Dodgers would have had an outfield that had Tommy Edman having meaningful starting at bats. And for them, and again, for the Dodgers,
Tommy Edman's good. Like, he's
I
a great player. Like,
I understand that, but for the Dodgers, they're trying to capitalize on a window where they're already spending an enormous amount of money, that they want to have the best starting lineup, and the outfield was the clear weakness. From my end of things, they shouldn't sit because other teams are not spending. I know the Mets offered, but if you have the ability to defer money, like, again, Shohei Ohtani was making $2 million last year. I understand down the line that will affect the Dodgers less than it would affect, let's just say, the Cleveland Guardians doing the same thing. But if you figure out a deal as far as annual value, the value of this contract for 4 years, I'm sure there is a smaller market team that over the course of time is paying a player similar. I mean, we can break it down. If you have the amount of money, $240 million, that's the amount of money. Like, again, if you're taking on a 10-year, 11-year deal for a guy that you're not going to be able to pay, and eventually he's going to sit, a team like the Dodgers, the Red Sox, the Mets, the Yankees can absorb that. But for $240 million, Kyle Tucker was out there. And like we said last night, the Dodgers are waiting in the grass. And the only reason he is a Dodger tonight is because no one else capitalized on this. And I understand $60 million is tough to swallow, but if you look at the full picture of $240 million, it almost is like an underpin. I hate to say that, but it's like, this is a player right now. For the Dodgers, don't care about 2030. They clearly don't. They want to win today. And yes, the system is broken, needs to be fixed. And I don't want other teams to be a farm system for the bigger markets. But you can't blame Kyle Tucker and you can't blame the Dodgers. And I understand that is a push and pull. Like, I feel bad for those teams, but it's not like Kyle Tucker, this was a direct result. Like, the Cubs didn't want him, by the way. Like, that's also part of this. And the Astros piece of this, like, they kind of said goodbye to him. But I wonder if the Astros would have been okay paying him 4 years, 240, because of the fact they thought they were going to pay 10 years, $500 million, because they thought he was going to get the Soto deal. So it's a completely different mindset of how we're paying. Like, AAV is insane. $60 million is insane for any player to get. But 240 over the course of that deal is like, that's pretty digestible for a lot of markets. I believe a lot of teams could have done this. They just didn't.
I can't get to a lot of teams. I just can't get there. I get it. Like overtime, all that stuff, but I just don't think other teams are made can handle that even over a long time with deferred money and that stuff. I'm not killing the Dodgers for this. Like you said, like, why wouldn't they do it if they're capable? Like, just because they don't want to hurt everyone else's feelings and piss off baseball fans, they don't care about that. They're trying to win again and create a dynasty of a lifetime here.
We got our good friend Nick in here. He said underpay quote ... I understand you pulled that quote and separated. I understand.
Yeah, I just can't.
The full scope of it, though, like 4 years.
Even,
like,
it's $60 million a year, dude. Like,
I understand that.
There's like 3 or 4 teams that could have done it. And he chose to. I'm not going to kill the Dodgers. I mean, I might get on Tucker a little bit because it's like, I mean, listen, what? You're not doing anything for your legacy. And I know there's been those rumors out there that he's not exactly the feisty guy that is obsessed with baseball. So maybe this is a soft landing spot for him in its best case scenario. But I'm not going to kill the Dodgers for it. It's a baseball problem. It's not a Dodgers problem. I mean, the deferred money, look at all the clubs that have done that this offseason. Now, with that being said, we still haven't seen anyone do the 98% of the contract is deferred, which is, I'm sorry, total bullcrap that is allowed. I'm okay with deferred money, but one thing they have to do is come up with a system where there's only a certain amount of money that's allowed to be deferred. 98% is nuts. And again, I think we're waiting on what the deferred money is here. I'm okay with it as long as it's not 90-something% again. You will hear from me in the form of Twitter if they're doing that again, because then it's a little harder to swallow here. I will say I'm not trying to be the complainer, but I don't think this is good for the league at all. Okay, I'm on the record of saying, at least this past season, I thought the Dodgers were good for baseball, of that evil villain. But this to me is unfortunate, because what you've had an offseason with some teams surprisingly being a little more aggressive and making moves, the Pirates of the world, right? You've had teams that you didn't expect that don't really do this come out and like try to build a little more of a competitor. And now you have this that makes it feel like, I don't want to say it's all for naught. You still get a more competitive product for your fans to come out and see. But it does kind of cheapen what everyone else has done. And again, not blaming the Dodgers because this is what they're allowed to do in the current system. But I would call this signing a little unfortunate for the rest of the league for a lot of different reasons. But I mean, we said we were going to talk about the Mets and the Blue Jays. We could talk till we're blue in the face about the salary cap and all that kind of stuff. There's going to be plenty of time for that the entire year, and it's not going to be fun because it doesn't seem to be going anywhere great. But quickly, let's mention the Mets and the Blue Jays, and maybe a little bit of some other teams that this might trickle down effect here. We'll start with the Mets. Steve Cohen puts that tweet out a couple of hours ago, and I mean, I said, and a bunch of people said, like, you do not tweet that out if you don't think you have this player signed. And this is, I'm sorry, I love Steve Cohen as a Mets fan here, but he's done this a few times where he just does not read the room and realize what this is going to cost. And he tried to follow it up with a tweet like, 15 minutes later when he saw it go blow up, saying, if you didn't get the reference about the Pope and seeing the smoke and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, too late, Steve. Like, Mets fans were over here like, I think we got him. And you add that, like you said earlier, on top of an already very frustrating offseason where we have seen some of our favorite homegrown players walk away, and not even just homegrown. I mean, Edwin Diaz, don't forget, he's in LA too. It's crazy. So this is tough. Again, for some reason, I feel a little numb to it. I'm not sitting over here super upset. I'll ask you, because if I give you two choices for the Mets right now, they can either continue to try to put a playoff team together here and move on, try to sign Cody Bellinger, try to sign Framber Valdez, and maybe a little around the edges, or they could say, damn, dude, I don't know if we're getting close to the Dodgers anyway, so we are going to let all these kids play and see what we got here. If it's you, as a baseball fan, as an outside observer, what do you see them doing at this point?
It's tough. I feel like there's a push and pull with Stearns and Cohen of two different approaches where obviously you have the idea to be able to throw money around and try to put the best team in the field, but there also is a trust in the young arms you have. And I think if you get value out of the guys and get some production out of the guys you're putting out there, like the McLeans and the Tongs of the world, and hopefully get the bounce back from Senga, then you're looking at a team that could be a fringe playoff team. But for me, like, you have to go out and get a bat. We discussed that before, figuring this out. Bellinger's the obvious thing. If you can talk him down from that 7-year deal he wants, and maybe he takes a short-term similar deal to Tucker here where he says, I'll give you 2 years, 3 years with the opt-outs and just try to compete this year. We know his swing would fit in Citi Field. We know how good he can handle New York. So the Bellinger thing might be a nice landing spot for them in the lineup. But I think, going back to the conversation just about the short-term deals with the AAVs, I just think this kind of changes things. I mean, obviously in the short term, because we have the idea of like the lockout certainly going to be a looming decision maker, is like, is the salary cap, because of something like this, going to be pushed through? Is this going to be the final linchpin that changes things for some of the owners of saying we need a salary cap and a salary floor to figure out a way to quote unquote save the game? But I think this is the workaround of, I mean, a lot of these owners not paying these players long into it. And I can't imagine that the MLB Players Association would be okay with a trend where you have players in their prime only signing these short-term deals. I think they want those long-term cushion deals, because I'd imagine when you have those guys like the Miguel Cabreras and the Albert Pujols at the end of their deal where they're not the same player, that's when the money actually helps, because you don't want to be based on what you're doing on the field right now. As far as the Players Association goes, right? I think they want the long-term deals, and that is going to be really just the trend of how we see front offices manage this. Because going back to what I said before, and I will stand by, $240 million, you see a lot of teams being able to pay that. Aaron Nola gets $172 million through 2030. It's separated over years. $330 for Bryce Harper. And then Trey Turner is $300 million. I understand it's separated over 11 years. So it's like, all right, 27.5. That's much different AAV, but it's the same amount of money coming out of the pool of what you have there. And this is a workaround for a Dodgers team that has found a workaround for everything. They found a way to expose the holes in all of these games. They blow hole in it, they blow air in it, and find the hole that is in this inflatable mattress that is Major League Baseball. They are finding a way to work around. And I think for the Dodgers, the rich get richer. And I just think this is one of those things where the league has to find a way to adapt. It has always adapted. What I will say for the doom and gloomers out there, the pessimists that's saying this is going to kill baseball, it always adapts. Baseball will find a way to persevere. My biggest fear is that this will be the 2027 lockout could destroy the league. But I think inevitably this type of stuff is cyclical. This is a cyclical league that we've seen in the past where we have advantages and quickly evaporate. Man, it's one of those things where when you see $60 million AAV, it is just, you never thought you'd see something like that. I mean, I think back, the most notable deal was the A-Rod deal back in the day. And we were like, that is a deal that we'll never see again. And that looks like small peanuts.
Yeah,
I mean,
that.
Inflation considered, but even the Cabrera deal with the Tigers, I remember seeing that number, which is ironically close. I think it is 240 over the course of 8 years, all those years back. That number seemed insane when Cabrera signed. I mean, at this point, it's 2 decades ago. It's crazy to think about how money gets there.
It is funny. I hope we see more of this of like, I want to see players' reactions. Michael Harris of the Braves just, he just tweeted out a picture of a referee doing the timeout signal. That's it. No words, anything like that. Because most players, when you ask them, I remember Bryce Harper's response last year of like, basically said something along the lines of like, anyone complaining about the Dodgers, it's like a loser mentality. Like, he's like, I think I like what they're doing. I wonder when that turning point comes where they're like, all right, screw this. This is getting out of hand here. The games still have to be played on the field. Everyone felt the same way at the beginning of last season. Like, Dodgers repeat no matter what. Like, it's obviously going to happen. And it did, but damn, did it come close to not. And a few bounces the other way and a little bit of a bigger lead here or there, right? The Toronto Blue Jays are world champions. And it's wild because what the Dodgers just did is kind of like, they kind of made everybody, at least temporarily, forget about all these other great off seasons, right? The Cubs, who were just getting lots of praise. The Toronto Blue Jays, who were the bells of the ball. Now suddenly you're like, oh, damn, we felt like we caught them. And now we're 5 steps behind again. And then, like, so just to finish up on the Mets, I'm just very curious to see where they go from here. I think there is a world where Cody Bellinger's phone is ringing off the hook tomorrow from both the Mets and the Yankees that are going to suddenly get very aggressive. And on the Mets side, because they missed out on Tucker. On the Yankee side, because they know the Mets are now going to have to go after Bellinger if they decide they still want to try to be a playoff team. They could push that back and say this is a development year. That doesn't play really well in New York, but, you know, they've already taken kind of half the steps to that. And now we're another step closer to that. But I think the logical pivot for the Mets, if they want to continue to be aggressive and say we're still trying to be a playoff team. And like I said, once you signed Juan Soto to that monster deal, I said it that night when we did an emergency pod for that signing. I said, you can never, ever take an offseason off now for these 15 years of Juan Soto. You do not give someone that deal and then just every once in a while say like, like rebuild. No. So it's not going to be accepted well if that's what they end up doing. They could still look in the trade market, right? It's weird because like when this offseason started, every Met fan, everyone analyzing the Mets said like they need to go out and get reliable starting pitching. And their most aggressive pursuit right now was to try to go get Kyle Tucker for $50 million a year, reportedly. Yet they also let Pete Alonso walk for much less money than that. So it's unpredictable for what they're going to do. But then there's the Blue Jays. I think Bo Bichette's phone is ringing right now. And I think they were willing to do all these years, apparently, from what we've heard. Again, I hope we actually see the real offer at some point for Kyle Tucker. I think you have to go call Bo Bichette. Because as I mentioned last night in episode 131, you have to expect that George Springer is going to take a step back. Okay, that season seems like an outlier last year. If I'm wrong, great. I'd be happy for George Springer, to be honestly. But you have to logically expect him to take a pretty significant step back from what he did last year. If Bo Bichette is out the window, you missed out on Kyle Tucker. I know they've made a lot of great moves. Bring Okamoto in, all those stuff. You could debate if they don't bring Bichette back. You could have the debate that their offense is maybe not as good as last year. I know that sounds crazy, right? We might get killed for this episode. You're saying that, anybody could have done this. I know that's not exactly what you said. Now I'm saying that the Blue Jays offense might take a step back. I'm just saying, when you really look at it, if you take some regression for certain players in that lineup into consideration, if you also lose Bichette here, you have to think, all right, this might not be as much of a slam dunk as we think, as far as the AL East, which is loaded. I don't know, what in your mind is it just logical, as simple as go sign Bo Bichette tomorrow, or do you think there's something else at play for Toronto?
And I still love what Toronto brings to the table if they took the field tomorrow, even without Bo Bichette. I think their lineup is dynamic. I like their pitching. I like everything they did. I mentioned Kyle Tucker being just icing on top of the sundae for them. I do and truly believe that. I think that the Blue Jays have had an excellent offseason. They've done a really good job of furthering where they were last year and building the team in their image. And Kyle Tucker would have fit that, by the way. Like we're all talking about, Kyle Tucker would have fit perfectly in the Blue Jays lineup. And I'm sure too, I mean, like, and I keep going back to it. The fact that all these guys are in play, and I think back last year, like for Juan Soto's camp, like would they have been like, he's making $51 million a year. He'll never, his grandkids are never going to want for money. But I think we're in agreement that Juan Soto is a better player than Kyle Tucker, right? So I think at the same time, and I know things move on and all that, but if you're Juan Soto, maybe you didn't know that some of this would be on the table for last year. Like imagine someone said, we'll give you 3 years, 70 per. Like, does this change the way we look at superstar players? Maybe. And trusting that, because a guy like Kyle Tucker in 4 years, I mean, we have the 2 opt-outs as well, by the way. And maybe he opts out of $60 million, which would be insane. But stranger things have happened.
Alex Bregman opted out of $40 million, which blew my mind. I mean, there's a world where it happens. Although, again, new CBA, who knows?
Yeah, and just my point with it. Does this change the way, like, maybe the leverage is like the agent and the player always said, we want the maximum amount of years so we can coast in our back end. Maybe now it's about putting all the risk up front, making the most money, and then having deals later down the line. Or I don't know, man. Like it changes the way you think about it, because seeing $240 million, like for a Kyle Tucker, like you're expecting to get that player until 2035. And the last 3 years, he's not going to be the same player you got in the beginning of the year. That's why, as a front office, like, I wonder if like the Mets didn't even think this was possible last year. Like, you have to give Juan Soto the amount of years he wants, because it's not about the money. Of course it is, but it's mostly about the years you're paying him. For Kyle Tucker, he could get another contract after this, by the way. You know what I mean? It blows my mind. And again, this is the loopholes the Dodgers continue to find. And you wonder why other front offices are not doing that. And this is all talking about the Dodgers as well, who this makes sense for them in the long term as well, where they have the opportunity for who's coming up after with the outfield talent that's nearing the majors. This kind of works for them as well, where you don't have an aging superstar that you're paying. Let's just say he got $45 million per year out there every day. You get the rookies out there, whether it's the Paula. I mean, it's flexible enough that you're not permanently blocking the next wave. And obviously if Tucker opts out, which again, I don't think he will, but they're going to have more ability to be flexible of how they've positioned this roster, where you have this surplus of talent in the draft in the minor leagues to get them up when you need to. And they're not blocked. It's like, it blows your mind a little bit. And I'm sitting here just like trying to wrap my head around the Dodgers, the sustained success, where this makes so much sense for Tucker, but also makes even more sense for the Dodgers in the immediate.
Yeah, and that's the sick thing. You mentioned like they have some of these super high prospects. Just recently, I don't know, I think it was a Baseball America poll or something. Maybe it was MLB. Like they polled front offices around the league of like who they thought had the best system, minor league system. And the executives picked the Dodgers. So not only are they the best in the majors, like they have the best development system as well. And they could move those guys if at any point they feel like they need to for something. Like Dalton Rushing is a name I'm thinking of right now, because major league guy at this point, super hyped prospect, talented player. They almost have no need for him. You got Will Smith there. Obviously, it's nice to have 2 catchers, but I think there was thought of playing him in the outfield, things like that. You could, if you want to go make your bullpen even better, you could go trade Dalton Rushing tomorrow for, I don't know, to the Astros for Brian Abreu or something like that, which the Astros might be willing to do, because Abreu will be he's a stud and he'll be a free agent at the end of the year. They're already paying Josh Hader $1 million. I mean, $1 billion, quote unquote. So they could make this team even better. Hell, we could be on here tomorrow like, oh my God, the Dodgers signed Bo Bichette too. Like they could use a second baseman. I don't think that's going to happen, but like it just seems like it's never ending with what their capabilities are. I mean, their projected lineup right now: Shohei Ohtani, Kyle Tucker, Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, Will Smith, Max Muncy, Teoscar Hernandez, Tommy Edman, Andy Pajes. I mean, it's gross, dude. It's just insanity. And again, $60 million for a guy, just looking at his Fangraphs page, like very, very good, but nothing over 4.9 F4. And last year, 136 games, 78 games the year before. And that I was very wrong yesterday when I said I thought there was this talk about Kyle Tucker having like the Anthony Rendon syndrome of like not really caring about baseball. I mean, I guess the Dodgers don't think that, because even if you're the Dodgers, you don't give $60 million to a guy that you think doesn't care about baseball. I'll say
and
that.
The thing is, too, where we don't know the deferment as we're recording right now at 11 p.m. Eastern on Thursday evening. I'm sure we have that information. When you think about the way the deferments have worked, not just for the Dodgers, but for other teams that have figured this out, where we're looking at 60 per year, we have a potential to have the deferments where you're paying this deal across the life of 11 years, where you're looking at a deal that is much more digestible down the line, which is, again, why I go back to quote unquote, where I will certainly be mocked by it, but calling it an underpay. Because if you're having this deal where you're paying him $6 million in 2026 and the money gets paid in the back end, you still owe the player the money. But as far as being digestible over the course of the year, wouldn't you say 10 years, $24 million a year for a guy like Kyle Tucker in 2026 would be an underpay? And that's the manipulation that probably needs to be fixed when we get to the CBA negotiations, because that is the outlier. The fact that you can do something like this, where you have Shohei Ohtani making $2 million a year and being able to okay with that, when you have other players, this is a problem. That is the problem, where you have the deferment. It's not that the Dodgers are paying all this money. It's the deferment of that money. If you force them to pay the AAV of what these players are worth on any given year, they would not be able to do this. I don't care if they have as much money as the Guggenheim. The fact that they are able to pay this down the line, we're going to be paying Shohei Ohtani in 2051. That is the issue. The deferment is the issue. So put your ire towards the deferment. And there's been other teams that are certainly benefiting from this, but no more than the LA Dodgers right now.
Well, let me make everybody a little more sick, because as I look at Twitter here, this might be the best point I've seen so far. You have to remember the Dodgers have been over the luxury tax, every year since 2021. And when you're over the luxury tax, especially different levels, you are paying way more than the actual contract because you're getting taxed, right? So someone tweeted out, this is actually like 100 million per year because they've been over the tax threshold every year since 2021. And then he responded to his own tweet saying, this is at upper_Beck is the tweeter here. Someone else actually gave the exact number. With the luxury tax, the Dodgers will be paying $126 million a season for Tucker if there were no deferrals. $126 million a year for Kyle Tucker. That's more than 11 teams' entire payrolls. Now, obviously, there are going to be massive deferrals. $126 million a year. That's basically what the value is to the Dodgers. So that's disgusting. Like that's just gross. I was, to be honest, I was kind of these last year or two, like in the middle. I've kind of gone back and forth. I am not a person who just makes up my mind and then doesn't listen to anybody. Thankfully, there's a lot of people like that in the world. I keep my mind open and I look at different arguments, and sometimes I change my mind completely. This is one of those issues I've been back and forth on and kind of in the middle. Like I can see both sides a little bit. The more I read about this one, the more I'm like, there has to be something. There has to be some kind of cap. And yes, I want a salary floor. Because a lot of times when you say you want a cap, the immediate response is like, no, we need a salary floor. Well, why can't we have both? We're gonna have both, right? So I don't buy that. But yeah, that's pretty gross. Let me ask you this: if they played a 7-game series right now, Dodgers against Team USA, who wins?
It would be a series. I mean,
and that's a problem, dude. This is the most loaded. This is the most loaded Team USA roster of all time. And your answer, which is probably the right answer, is that one of 30 major league teams, the Dodgers, would put up a really good series against a country's best players. And in the US, it's our game. That's insanity.
Well, I mean, looking at Otani, and I'm more digging into the deferments, and we all know when Otani signed, it was for $700 million, 10 years. They're not paying that quite yet. And I use the year 2051 as like hyperbole. They're actually going to be paying him to 2043. So breathe easy, everybody. So they're doing that. $680 million of that $700 million is not going to be paid until 2034. So the same thing I feel like is going to happen with Tucker, where you potentially, again, could be paying him marginally in the first end of this deal. And at the back end of that second year, third year, you might be paying him excess. And again, what do they care? We watched the value that Shohei Ohtani and just the Dodgers winning the World Series brought to the franchise. Apparently, the life of Ohtani's contract, if you believe reports in the metrics, has already been paid for tenfold because of what they made back in merchandise and ticket sales and just everything that goes with being a championship team. So I go back to, and there's a lot of great conversation in the chat. We appreciate you guys joining us here on a Thursday. Again, going through a therapy session, the ebbs and flows of an off season. The conversation has to be in earnest, sitting at a table and figuring out how to fix the loopholes. And it's not about telling teams that they can't spend like the Dodgers, because right now, similar to the steroid era where there were no rules against it, once we get to a level where we can have an earnest conversation about what this is doing to the game, then we can actually be at a starting point, because it's on both extremes. We've had this conversation over and over again where it is the haves and have-nots, the ability to spend and not spend, because the owners that are unwilling to spend are giving a bad names to the franchises that can't spend at the same level. So those are grouped into the same bucket, which may not be fair, but I think we have to find a way. And they've tried that with the competitive balance. It has not worked. Obviously, you mentioned the value of these contracts, but the taxes added on top of it. And there's also, the cost that is happening here where, of course, again, this doesn't help a lot of people, and the Dodgers aren't going to miss this, but because Tucker rejected the qualifying offer, the Dodgers will forfeit the additional draft capital. And, they already have the penalties from Edwin Diaz as well. So the Dodgers have, sustained themselves, the elite development, all of that. Those penalties are not severe enough, right? Because I think at this point they're looking at it saying, we don't give a shit about the qualifying offer. If you're a big market team, you let that roll off your shoulders, because this is not a team where the end is soon, right? The Dodgers, we talk about the window when they're going to, when is the Death Star going to explode and Luke Skywalker is going to be standing and getting the medal. And they don't give one to Chewie for some reason, which bothers me. They give it to him in the second trilogy, but I digress. Just the idea that this is not ending, because they have players that will be affordable right behind the players. When Tucker's deal is up, whether he opts out or not, and I don't think he's going to be opting out, especially with the way he's been playing in the injury history. Even if this 4 years is up, like we mentioned, DePola, he's going to be up there and he's going to be getting league minimum. And then the Dodgers going to have an elite player there.
Too. Yeah.
So my thing is, sit at the table, have an earnest conversation. Everyone wants to point fingers at the Dodgers. The league has an issue. It's not a Dodger specific issue. This is just them exposing and being willing to do whatever it takes. While our favorite teams, I'm a Yankee fan, you're a Met fan, we both know that both of our teams could have done this and then some. They didn't. And that might be the issue.
I'll speak as a Met fan here. I'm not going to sit here and be like, we could have we offered the dude $50 million a year, apparently. So if there's anything I'm annoyed at, it's the Steve Cohen read the room, dude, kind of tweet. I can't believe he thought that was going to be okay. Not knowing if he had the player or not. It blows my mind. A guy that freaking smart, right, has made all the money in the world. Clearly, he's got to be a really smart dude. That's the lack of self-awareness or the lack of social media. And I know as Met fans at first, we thought it was really cool that he was on Twitter. And sometimes it is he's done some fun stuff on there and some good stuff. But every once in a while, it's I don't think this is worth it, dude. Don't be on here. I'll just say this, and this is really my last thought about all of it. And to be honest, sometime tomorrow we'll probably all be moving on to where's Bo Bichette going, where's Framber Valdez going, where's Cody Bellinger going, and I would assume now, as we are getting very close to spring training, and now some of these big guys have fallen off the board, I would assume it's going to start going pretty fast here. But I'll say this. I can't speak for everybody, but I think a lot of the people that are going to say I'm not watching anymore are probably still going to watch. And as wrestling fans, I think it's like that effect of Monday Night Raw has been so bad, I'm not watching anymore. And then you tune in because you just do it. For baseball, yes, the Dodgers are this ultra big villain. I am no longer going to sit here and say they're good for baseball because I do think this is, like I said earlier, what I really don't like about it is it's taking some of the shine and the excitement off of those clubs that did some cool stuff this offseason that we didn't expect. The Orioles, the Pirates of the world, and we could go on. That's what I really don't like about this. But even though I don't think it's good for baseball anymore, you're going to tune in because it's like the Jake Paul effect. You want to see if someone can knock this dude out. Like, obviously, Dodger fans are going to tune in. Why wouldn't they? Like, it's what a pleasant experience to watch that every single night. Like, in a way, and this is the sick Mets fan in me, it's like, I don't know if it's, I need a little stress in my life when I watch my team. Like, I feel like that's part of the fun because when they finally overcome it, it's like, it's glorious. Like, I used to say this about the Yankees when they were the evil empire spending. I'm like, is it? And I probably said this to you over the years, like years ago. Like, is it even fun being a Yankee fan? Like, you just know you're going to win all the time and get the best players all the time. I do think that's a real thing. And again, maybe it's just because I've been a Mets fan my whole life. But like, to me, it's more fun when you're the team that comes out of nowhere or overcome adversity, all that kind of stuff. But it's the Jake Paul effect, man. Most of us are going to tune in. And I mean, that's why that World Series was so amazing last year because everyone couldn't believe what they were watching, and it looked like the Blue Jays were going to do it. Yeah, I
had I had to add Stevie Cohen on here with this tweet. Let me know when you see smoke. Well, we see smoke, Stevie, but I mean, I agree with you. Like there is this thing, and we have a lot of people in the chat. We appreciate everyone that's hopping in here and having a conversation with us. I do agree this is a baseball problem, not a Dodgers problem. The thing is when you have something like this, and you mention it like the Dodgers not being good for baseball, and I could make the argument they are, because in order to get better, you have to recognize that you're sick. And the Dodgers are now a symptom explaining like baseball's not well. Something needs to be fixed. We need to sit down. We need to go to the doctor, be assessed, and figure out what the problem is and get medication for this ailment for us right now. You don't want to put a Band-Aid on a broken leg. They've tried to do that with the competitive balance tax. They try to do that with the compensation with the draft picks. Clearly, something else has to change. And the only way you realize it when you have a team come in like the Dodgers and expose everything that is wrong with the game. So right now, and it might be a perfect time for the conversation for the CBA to have an honest, earnest, intelligent conversation about making this game better, because something has to change clearly. There are consequences to this down the line. And whether we accept it or not, the Dodgers are revealing for everyone. So maybe at the end of the tunnel, they are the hero of this story, Devin.
Sure, we could make that twist. Yeah. I know I lied. I said that was my last thought before. I do have one more thought. Other than the Dodgers, you know who the real winner is here? Who's the other big winner? Who would you say?
Kyle Tucker's grandkids?
Sure. I'll take that answer. But the Houston Astros look freaking amazing right now. Because again, we mentioned this last night too. It came up in the Tucker conversation. The Houston Astros, in my opinion, had all intentions before Juan Soto signed with the Mets for that insane deal, or what we at least used to think was insane. I'm not sure if we do anymore. Before the Soto signing last year, I think the Astros had all intentions to try to make Kyle Tucker a longtime Astro. And then it probably didn't happen this way, but the way I remember it, I felt like it was like a day later that they just put him on the market when they saw the Soto price. Like, whoa, no, we know we can't keep him for that. So let's get something for him. And they got a good amount for Kyle Tucker. And I got to say, man, I think the Astros come out looking like gold here.
Yeah. And I also would make the argument that similar to the NFL, and I know we'd like to make the comparisons to the sports, and sometimes it is an apples and oranges thing, but when you watch sort of this figuring out of how to maximize your competitive window, it usually happens on rookie deals, especially when you have a quarterback on a rookie deal. And I think where we have to get to is reinforcing, developing your own talent, which the Dodgers have done. We're not saying they haven't, but a way to be able to win and also keep the cost down like the Dodgers will eventually do, and then let them go to greener pastures because they continue to develop good talent. But I look at the deals, like if you look at the Bo Nix of the world and Brock Purdy, Purdy got paid, but when you have even, I think of the Seahawks window, The only reason the Seahawks went to back-to-back Super Bowls is because the Legion of Boom was on a rookie deal, all of them. They couldn't pay all of them. And then Russell Wilson was on a rookie deal. And then bringing it full circle, like I feel like you have to figure out a way to maximize that. And that's how you get competitive balance in truth, because you can't replicate it. You can't fake it. You can't force it into everybody. You have to create an ecosystem that reinforces competitive balance. And I think what Major League Baseball has done is try to put strings in place to force it. And we're seeing the Dodgers continue to expose it, because I mentioned before, blowing up the mattress and finding the hole. That's what they're doing. They've blown it up, and now they've exposed the multitude of holes that are all over this thing that are just blowing and leaking air. And the Dodgers have continually done that. And we all love a big bad villain, but ultimately this has to get solved. And it's not by beating the Dodgers in the World Series. It's not by them not making the playoffs. It's about having the ability to make this game better. And they have an opportunity in 2027 to do that. And I think they can't let up on that opportunity. They really have to figure this out and don't let this get in the way and lock us out because everyone's upset that the Dodgers are paying all this money. Fix the problems. Sit down and do it. You have time. Fix the goddamn problems.
Yeah, I mean, maybe there are these conversations going on right now between. There should be, like, I don't know if there's rules about when they can actually negotiate, but I would hope conversations are already starting and they're trying to work through some of this stuff, because it's going to be a long conversation.
So for Tarek Skubal for a second, like, I understand, like, he's a pitcher. He wants a long-term deal. He deserves it. He's shown the ability to be the best pitcher in the world. But if you're his camp today and and sitting there and saying, maybe you want 3 years, $75 million right now, instead of taking 11, whatever it would take, $400 million to have him sign long-term. If you're like Tarek Skubal, are you trying to maximize the AAV, or do you want the length? It's all crazy monopoly money in our world, but does this change like the Skubal perspective? Because I think if you look at the $60 million per year, the Tigers could afford to pay Skubal that, and that's more digestible over the course of 4 years. That's what I mean. Like this could change things a little bit. Like to pay Skubal $60 million per year for the Tigers for 4 years, I think they would sign up on that right now. Wouldn't you?
No, I don't think so. Because you got to remember, like, can they do this kind of stuff? Sure, but they have to build a whole team. Like,
but
they would have to.
If they defer, like the Dodgers are doing it, though. I'm saying,
yeah.
If they're paying him, let's just say he gets $60 million per year, but you defer it in the same way, similar to the Ohtani deal, where the lump sum of the deal is being deferred. Worry about it later and sign Skubal for 4 years if you're the Tigers.
Yeah, but there's like the Shohei Ohtani effect is so real, where this dude is making that team money hand over fist, so they know they're going to continue raking in this money that they will have for the future. Whereas these other teams are like, yeah, we can defer money, but like, you can't defer like that, because we are going to absolutely screw ourselves years down the road. And I don't think most teams are willing to do that. Whereas the Dodgers feel like they can just keep on printing money, and they seem like they can. I don't, and I will say this. I was going to make one more point. The one part about the Dodgers argument that I hear a lot that I really have started to dislike, when you hear about the Dodgers, like people protecting them, and they should be protected, again, because it's not their fault, but like they say, well, they're doing everything better than everybody, right? Their development is better. They're a better run franchise, first class, all that stuff. And I get that. And they do have amazing prospects every year. They're near the top. But where they lose me is when they say the development part. I feel like they say it as if they bring all these dudes up and they go win a championship. Look, it's a bunch of mercenaries on that team, right? Mookie Betts was traded over there. Freddie Freeman was signed as a free agent. Like, go around. Tommy Edman was a trade as well. Go around the diamond. Kyle Tucker is the ultimate mercenary at this point. You got Will Smith, homegrown. Andy Pages, who's not really a full-time player. At least he wasn't in the playoffs. Like, there's really not that many. Look at the pitching staff. It's a bunch of mercenaries. So yeah, they do have a great system, and they do use it to their advantage often by using them in trades and things like that. I'll give them that. But don't try to tell me the product on the fields. And I'm not saying you were trying to say this, but I hear this often. Like, don't try to allude to like the players I'm watching on the field for the Dodgers were all brought up. Like, I'd love for them to eventually do that. Like, prove how good your system is at the big league level. Let's see more of those guys there. But like, I get it. Why would you do it? And to be honest, I think that is what David Stearns is trying to move to when he's talking about a more sustainable product. I do think he wants to let these guys develop and then add with these big contracts here and there because they have that money factor too. But I think that's what he was trying to do, and I think they wanted Kyle Tucker in the mix there, and obviously they don't have him. So we'll see what the pivot is there. You don't want to pivot just for the sake of pivoting. Like you want to actually stick to your plan. But man, it's the Dodgers world. Every other team is just living in it right now.
And I also look at just they're able to actually pinpoint the value of the championship effect and, back to back and potentially a three-peat and everything we've seen with the Ohtani stuff. And they can actually put the number in place. And I think for a lot of teams, it's all hypothetical, where we mentioned the Tigers potentially winning a championship if they re-sign Skubal. And that's a big if, big capital I, big capital F. There's no guarantee in that. But what is the value of that down the line? Would it be worth that money? Like, I don't know. And I'm asking the question with genuine interest, because what number is that? Is that worth it for a franchise? Let's just say if you had the Tigers in a room and say, we'll guarantee a World Series and sign Skubal for $65 million per year. Are they doing it? And I guess the real question is, what is the value you get back from a championship? What does it do for attendance? What does it do for your fan base? What does it do for long-term growth in the market? And I don't know. I don't have that answer. The Dodgers have that answer, but it's hard to quantify because they were starting at such an excess starting point of the amount of money they had to start with. So it's just an interesting conversation because we know winning does breed success after the fact, and a whole bunch of generations of fans are going to come around. And that's not even being hyperbolic or saying it in a negative way, where a lot of fans, they want to come around when they're winning. There's only some of us that stick around when we're losing. And, you're a Met fan. I root for the New York Islanders. The Yankees haven't won in quite some time. Like, there is a little bit of like, we're the outlier sometimes in sports. The casual fan doesn't come around unless there's sustained winning. And I think for the Dodgers, they're benefiting from a lot of bandwagon fans that are there. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. Baseball needs bandwagon fans. But what does that do for the market? Like, is it worth it for the Tigers? Going back to my original conversation.
Yeah, I would love to be in a room with Tigers management right now to know what the long-term plan is there. Like, there's unfortunately a part of me that feels like the Dodgers trading for Tarek Skubal tomorrow is more likely than the Tigers actually trying to lock him up. We've already, seen the arbitration situation, which is interesting, $13 million apart. Like, and I'm not saying that just in jest. Like, the Dodgers could call them up tomorrow and be like, we have Dalton Rushing, Joshua DePaula, Zaire Hope, a few of the young pitchers, River Ryan. Like, we will give you all these guys for the 1 year of Tarek Skubal, and the Tigers would probably have to say yes at that point. Like, and the Dodgers might do that just to bring him in for a year and just be an absolute insane, the best roster we've ever seen. So the idea of, is it worth it? You could really get into the player. I mean, Tarek Skubal isn't old, but he's also not super young. And again, unfortunately, as a pitcher, you do have to bake that whole, when is he going to get injured kind of conversation in. So it's difficult to get to that point of like, is this the one we go all in for? And can we build a good enough team around him afterwards to make it worth it? That's the thing. Like, that big contract for your starting pitcher prize is only worth it, not just to keep him. It's only worth it if you can still build a championship team around him, Otherwise, it's like, oh, great, we have this really shiny object, but we're not going to win anything with him because he's taking so much of that money that we don't have the means to then build all around him. Now, I will say the Tigers in some ways are in a good spot with some youngsters coming up the next few years, and that might be an argument, and maybe that's what you're kind of getting towards with, like, listen, they have Kevin McGonigal coming up soon. They have Max Clark in the future and Josue Briseño. Like, these guys are supposed to be studs. And if our plan is give Tarek Skubal the big money, and then we're hoping all these guys turn out, yeah, I mean, I could get behind that. But it's tough to say without knowing exactly where they're willing to go, like, financially.
Yeah, going back to the original conversation where it would be crippling for the Tigers to pay $600 million for a player or a pitcher or whatever. But over the course of $240 million, $240 million on the length of the contract, however short it is, I feel like that's more salvageable. And I think that it puts them back in play for Tarek Skubal. But Nick is in here. He says about Shohei Ohtani, the advantage of Shohei, how much money he makes allows certainty other teams can't have. And that is a true fact. But I go back to his time in Anaheim. And I apologize to Love of Sports 24, who is an Angels fan in here. But why weren't they able to capitalize him while they had him there? And it's just an interesting dynamic where, of course, winning does breed that, but we saw him jump further into the world of superstardom with the market that Los Angeles provided. And that is something that the Anaheim Angels, the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim don't have. Just an interesting thing. And for the question that you, or the proposition of the Tigers trading Skubal for that package, if you're the Tigers, like, how do you not do that? You know what I mean? Like, that is the other thing. And I feel like, too, there'd be more pushback on that deal happening rather than the Tucker deal. And I guess it remains to be seen. Most people would be more upset about the Skubal thing, even though the other team is being compensated. Right now, the only compensation right now is the Dodgers losing draft capital. Like, that's the only thing that they're losing, and they're being penalized on the tax. At the very least, at least the Tigers would be getting better in the immediate and also in the future if they lose Skubal. Not better, but they wouldn't be left holding nothing if they let him walk in free agency.
Yeah, I mean, I'm rooting for the Tigers to somehow try to keep him. He's one guy I don't want to see let go. You know what? I'll say this now. Between the Soto contract, obviously Shohei, now Tucker, you know who the most underpaid player in Major League Baseball is?
We're talking AAV?
Yeah, I guess AAV, yeah.
Most underpaid for what they're doing currently? Like, as far as
Yeah.
Can you give me a hint of when they signed their deal a long time
Well, this
ago?
is my opinion. I'm not saying this as like it's calculated fact. This is an opinion.
All right, we'll throw it my way. Let's see if I agree.
Aaron Judge.
True.
This dude now, seeing what these guys are making, it's like, holy shit. Like, I wish I was a free agent like at a different time. I mean, he's not
agreed.
Crying for Jamie's making around $40 million a year. It's just nuts because that guy's one of the best players we've ever seen in our lives, and he's making so much less.
We also saw it shift. So we mentioned Soto's deal. Like, I go back to, like, would he have done something like this if he knew it was possible? And I can't speak for him and his team. Like, there's something nice about having a huge long-term deal where well past your prime, you're going to be getting paid millions of dollars. But imagine what he would have got in the open market if Kyle Tucker is getting 60 a year and Soto would get well above that. I mean, he's getting 51 right now. And I know we're talking about in a scope of money that is just insane to even say we got here, but something has to break the other way. And it's not going down, by the way. We're not finding a way that these players are going to make less money. So that we're just breaking these marks. Like, think about Stanton's contract and A-Rod's contract and Pujols back in the day. And when Cano signed the deal with the Mariners, I don't know. It's just all these things of, like, how is this sustainable? Are we eventually in our lifetime, when we're crotchety old men yelling at the clouds, different, are we going to see $1 billion player? Are we getting there? I mean, it feels like it's close, right?
Well, I mean, oh God, again, it's going to depend on what happens with the salary cap or not, because eventually, if there's a cap, like, there is going to be a number that's kind of the top number, and that top number will increase every so often as things go, as we've seen in the NBA. I mean, the NBA, man, like, I think baseball contracts are crazy. Sometimes I see a news report go on the bottom line of, like, this player signed with some NBA team for just a crazy amount of money. And I'm like, I don't even know who that player is. And it's like their sixth man. It's nuts what NBA players make. Like, non-starters are making wild money. So like you said, even with a salary cap and things like that, you can still make some kind of outlandish money. But the Soto thing's an interesting point, man. Like, you just made me think of this as far as, like, would he do it differently now? He has an opt-out in 2030. And I never thought I would sit here and say, like, $51 million, if you include the luxury tax, is not enough. But, like, depending on how the next several years go, and I mean, he'll be at 31 at that point, which is 3 years older than Tucker is now. And again, not the most athletic as far as movement goes for Soto. So maybe that's not in the cards for him. But, like, if he's just destroying the baseball in the back of his baseball card for the next 4 years, it's crazy to say, but there's a world where he actually takes that opt-out, and not just to get a little more money out of the Mets like some people do. Like, we saw that with A-Rod years ago, where he it was like a technicality, opt out of the Yankees deal, throw him a little more money, but he's going to stay. Garrett Cole tried to do it and ended up just making the same amount of money. He didn't look good on that one. But yeah, it's crazy to think about, but he does have that 2030 opt-out.
Yeah, and the thing is, never say never, because the way this is going, where he'll have a chance to rewrite history a little bit, but I'd imagine Soto's going to stay. We'll see what happens down the line, but man, all of this, like, I feel like it's a good opportunity on here to vent about it and have a conversation in real time and process it with all these people in here in the chat. We appreciate all you guys hopping in here with us. If you're not listening, live with us, again, you listening after, we do appreciate that as well. But follow us at Tablesetters Pod on Instagram and on X. We went live on X, also on YouTube at Tablesetters Baseball. Bird Talks Ball saying Judge would command $1 billion. And I said it in jest, like, are we going to see $1 billion player down the line? I mean, looking at the value of some of these players, where on the open market, $700 million is not, it's far away from $1 billion, but not that far. If you look at the way growth has gone, we look at A-Rod's record-setting deal and Stanton's deal. In 10 years, is it crazy to say that we'll have our first cumulative value of a whole deal being $1 billion? I don't think that's that insane to say.
No, you're probably right. I just caught this in the background looking at my picture here. I have this book in the background, Jeff Pearlman book about the 86 Mets called The Bad Guys Won. Classic. That's a headline that we could see tomorrow. Bad Guys Won.
All right, so I got the full details. Jeff Passan has put it on here, just what all like the signing bonus and all that. So 4 years, $240 million guaranteed, opt-outs after years 2 and 3, $64 million signing bonus, $30 million deferred, $57.1 million a year in net present value after factoring in deferrals, a record by $6 million plus. Jeff Passan calls it a staggering deal. So $30 million deferred. So that puts it at 210 in value, separate all of them. It's still 57.1 a year, which is still 6.1 more than, or 5 more than Soto. Still insane. I thought they'd be opting out more. I mean, they'd be
30 million
more.
total. 30 million total, or they're deferring 30 million a year, like half of it.
It says 30 million deferred, so I'm assuming that's total because it's $57.1 million a year.
That's way less deferment than I expected, because we read that number, what this number actually is with the tax. I mean, I want to see the new number with the tax. Like, they're going to be paying this dude an absolutely insane number with the tax added on. That's just crazy.
So the other question too, where again, this has to be worked out, because it's easy to say, put in a floor, put in a cap, but what happens to these deals? Because say we do somehow, by some miracle, owners and players get together, kumbaya, they play the guitar, they all eat Chipotle in a room somewhere, and they say there's a salary cap. What happens to these deals right now? Do you have to figure out a way to reconstruct them, or do they get grandfathered in until further down the line?
Grandfathered in, which is kind of my point before. The Dodgers probably saw this as like, this might be the last chance we can do something like this. So we'll put our wallet on the table and do it. Yeah, no, all this stuff will be grandfathered in. Absolutely.
It's insane. I mean, $30 million deferred is not as much as I thought it would be. So it kind of changes my perspective of being,
not even close,
quote unquote, underpay. But
yeah,
like,
all right. Yeah, other teams couldn't do this stuff, man. I expected so much more. I expected at least
other
half
team
the total money.
But other teams could have figured out a way to defer more money, because it's allowed to defer as much money as you want, as long as the player is willing to do such a thing.
When you say other teams, who are you talking about? Like everybody?
There are certainly have-nots that can't do the same thing, but there's some mid-market teams that could get in there and do something like this. We saw the Texas Rangers pay big money for players. The Texas Rangers could have easily done something like this.
Well, there's also a lot of the TV shit still going on, where like, even like the FanDuel Sports Network stuff is starting to kind of fall apart, and now more and more of these teams are going under the MLB umbrella of producing games. We just saw the Nationals.
That's a huge issue, because that's a leverage the Dodgers don't have to worry about right now.
Because you're right, the Rangers were big spenders just a few years ago. You know, signing Corey Seager away from the Dodgers. Like, when was the last time we heard that? Probably Corey Seager.
Signed DeGrom, by the way, and Semien.
Yeah.
Like they paid a lot of money.
And the TV stuff happened, and it happened to a lot of other teams with uncertainty with where the money's coming from TV wise, which is another story on its own. But yeah, I mean, I will, again, the Yankees of the world, the Mets, the Red Sox,
the Phillies could do something like this.
The Phillies, yeah, but they already have a lot of pretty highly paid players there as well. They could, but again, I think they're in the mix. I think they're passionate about the Bichette stuff. We'll see where that goes. And I'll just say that too, man. I said it the other day, but even more now, man. Bichette is going to get paid by someone.
It is crazy when you look at the AAV. And again, I will clarify one more time. The length of the deal makes it possible for another team to say, we're going to pay $240 million. If this was 10 years, $60 million per, again, it puts them in a stratosphere that you're not able to even touch, because that is the fact that it is a short-term deal kind of opens the door. Like, again, it benefits the players, but it also benefits some other teams to get in there and do this. But the key thing is the deferral piece. Like, again, $30 million deferred, other teams would have to defer way more money. That is a fact, to do something like this on a yearly basis, because you can't have your team out there unless you're guaranteeing to have sellout every night, which you can't guarantee, especially in the whatever market you're in, and also winning a championship. Because we know when you make, just even for the Reds playing that one playoff game, that helped them immensely for the next year, just to get the one game. You know what I mean? Like, the idea that you made a playoff push, whether you got there on a backing in or not, doesn't matter. Like, to make the playoffs helps these franchises immensely, and winning goes a very long way. Even like for football, I don't want to rant about it. Like the Jags hosting a playoff game, they may have lost the Bills and they had a great year and they're a great story and they're growing. Trevor Lawrence took the next step. They hosted a playoff game, and that is such a huge thing for them. Like, yeah, again, for the growth of the team and building towards what they're doing, but also financially to host a game like that. And what goes into that, buying these winning is the most financial gain for all these teams. And I want every team trying to win in the best way possible. That's the biggest thing. I want there to be competitive balance in a genuine way.
Of course. And to me, this signing, especially with what we've seen this offseason with some other teams doing more than we've seen them do in the past, I think this signing kind of hurts that whole, like, oh, no one, like, these other teams are actually the bigger problem. Like, they're not trying hard enough. That's kind of been taken apart this offseason a little bit. I just want to go through, for the first time in a while, I refreshed Twitter, and it's very fascinating to look at different people's opinions. So just look at a few, and some of them are kind of very similar to what we've talked about. Jared Carabas, Red Sox guy, obviously. The most improved team of the offseason is the team that just won back-to-back World Series titles. Stupid. Okay. Spot Rack, which is a great website for looking at contracts and estimates and things like that. Love that website. Including deferred payments, the Dodgers now have $2.11 billion of guaranteed salary on their books. Nick Pollock, pitcher list. 1 year of Kyle Tucker equals 89% of the Miami Marlins 2025 payroll. A couple more here. There's some funny ones I'm not going to read, but the last one for now. Well, Eno Saris, former guest of Tablesetters, not so bold prediction. Dodgers don't win the World Series next year. He's calling that not so bold. Interesting. And then the last one, and I thought this one was a solid one here. Kind of level-headed. Cespedes Family BBQ. The money flowing into the sport is a good thing. The hopelessness that 15 fan bases feel every winter is a bad thing. Both of these things can be true. And I think that's the point I've been trying to get to. That's how I feel.
That's a good way to quantify it. I would say 15 might be a stretch, but there is a large portion of the teams that have no chance going into the year. But you push the argument, the Mariners of the world, the Blue Jays of the world being in the ALCS. I know they eventually lost to the Dodgers, but there are teams that were involved last year that we thought would have no chance. My question to you before we wrap up here, and I know it's hard for you to remain objective because you would have a rooting interest, but would you have a different reaction if the same deal happened where the Mets signed Kyle Tucker, $60 million per year? Would you feel the same way today that this is bad for baseball, or is it just the Dodgers doing this because they've done it before?
I'm not so to clarify, I'm not saying it's bad for baseball because the money they're giving him. I'm saying it's bad for baseball because he landed with the Dodgers. Because I just feel like it kind of steps on some of these other positive stories that we've seen that have been such a pleasant surprise. Again, with the Pirates, with the Orioles being so aggressive, I think this kind of just says, like pushes them back down a little bit. And I was getting excited for some, teams kind of being better than we thought and having more of a chance than we thought. So it's not so much the money. I mean, I think the money's crazy, but going to the Mets, in one way, you could still argue it's still not good because it's still one of those 5 big teams. And again, like I said before, you don't want that feeling of like all these other teams basically being farm systems for the New York teams and the LA teams and Philadelphia and just the big cities. But the Mets don't have that insanity of a roster, right? The Mets don't have Blake Snell and Shohei Ohtani in their rotation and Tyler Glass now and on and on and on, right? They have a bunch of youngsters and Kodai Senga and Sean Manaea. So, it's not the same if Kyle Tucker goes to the Mets. The money's nuts, but it's more competitive balance, which you've mentioned. Like we have to get this to a point of the Dodgers can still be really good every year because even with a salary cap, they're going to go to that cap every year and other teams are not. But like, there's a point where it's just getting out of control. And this will be my last thing. I'll go back to a few, maybe 20 minutes ago when I asked you genuinely, Team USA as constructed right now against the Dodgers constructed right now, who would win a series? And your answer to me is very telling that it would be a great series. That shouldn't be. That should not be.
Yeah, I mean, to wrap it up here, it's just another demonstration that the Dodgers are not merely spenders at the top of baseball, but they've become a little bit of an architect of the outcomes, and they're bending traditional norms like contracts to maintain their control, like Thanos in the Avengers, over the present and the future of baseball. And the only thing that stops this is changing the infrastructure that surrounds it. So again, pointing towards all the pundits out there that are saying, and a lot of these main writers like Passan, John Heyman, all these guys have not said this is a good or bad thing. And I think there is a conversation to be had about the health of baseball. And we talk about the attendance and the record numbers we're seeing and just the health of the game in general. But we want to protect that. I think we all love baseball here. We all have a rooting interest with our teams. But I think at the overall core of this, Devin, we're all fans of the sport. And I think we want the health of the game to take precedent. And I think we can't lose sight of that. And I think we're at a pivotal point with the lockout looming. Yes, we'll enjoy baseball this year. We're all looking forward to warm weather, drinking a beer out there in the bleachers. But there's something big on the line here. And I think this is more exposure of that, the details of like what really needs to get ironed out. We can't go there and punt on a CBA and just kind of and not solve the issues that are there. It is really, it's time to solve the issues that have really plagued the sport for a while now. And we have to figure out a way to make this better.
Yeah, and I think everyone thinks that. It's just tough to be optimistic that these two sides are going to be able to get that done. And that's a real shame of a thought with how hot baseball is and all the positivity. So my fingers are crossed for the best outcome. But I'll say one last question, and we can close out here. As you sit there right now, gut feeling for where Bo Bichette goes, where Cody Bellinger goes, where Framber Valdez goes.
So I see Bo going to Philly. Actually, I think he goes to Philly. I don't know. We didn't hear how the meeting went. Bellinger, I think he eventually crawls back and goes to the Yankees. I think that will happen. And as far as Framber goes, interesting thought. I think he winds up with the O's. Still sticking with that.
Okay, yeah, I mean those make sense.
Well, getting Nick's hope up here. You heard it here first, man. I got the Dodgers being right with Kyle Tucker. Let's just say Bo Bichette goes to Philly and make your night. I could see him in the uniform.
Yeah,
I said it before. And for Philly, I mean, the NL East is wide open for them to take it on. I know the Braves obviously can be back next year.
Of course.
But why not the Phils, though? You know what I'm saying? Like, why not the Phils?
I mean, no, I think they're the heavy favorite right now, to be honest. Bo
Bichette puts them a little bit in the higher tier where there's no worry.
I mean, I would call them heavy favorites right now, even without Bo Bichette, to be completely honest. I think the Braves are in second place as we speak right now, and I honestly don't know what else happens as currently constructed. But the next few days will be fascinating between those guys, maybe signing, rumors, but also getting more information trickling out about how this went down and what the other offers were. So I'm looking forward to seeing all of that.
So speaking of jersey, you said, Nick's in there talking about getting Bichette jersey. Bregman's wearing number 3, by the way. You see any of the press conference? Fan Fest is tomorrow. I know we mentioned before the press conference happened. Looks good, the uniform, wearing the Cubs colors, looks good. And I think it's going to be a nice little love affair with Bregman, bringing a little grit to their team.
Yeah, wearing number 3 because he said he wants to win his 3rd World Series. So kind of like Girardi managing the Yankees, wearing
calling his shot, man.
The next World Series.
Worked out for Joe G, man.
Yeah, maybe in 5 years, Bregman, you sign again because I don't know when the Dodgers are losing. Let's be honest.
Exactly. Well, if Bregman has his way, man, he's going to want to beat them. He doesn't like those Dodgers at all.
Of course.
Again, we appreciate you guys hopping in the chats, all the usuals in here. If you're listening on demand, of course, we appreciate that as well, being our one-stop shop for baseball. We'll be back talking all things in the news, of course, and being back with our normal episodes. If something else breaks down the line, we're going to be here with an emergency episode having a conversation. One last time, we'll give you guys Stevie Cohen. Let me know when you see smoke, man. Grok does a masterful job, by the way. Like all you got to do is just put it right in Grok on X, and here he is. Kind of even looks like him too, wearing the grill and everything.
Yeah, I don't know what's up with the black Mets hat with blue, no orange.
That's their new alternates next year, man. The new jerseys coming out. How you feel? They wore purple.
Like
they were purple.
Don't get me started. We're trying to end the episode. Don't get me started on the purple.
All right, we're going to be getting out of here, guys. We do appreciate all your support as always. Again, we will talk to you after a while. And as always, happy baseball. This one by Mattingly.